Today's message is necessary imagination. See it and be it. It's the second message in the series that I'm offering called Imagine, encouraging us to understand more about the role of imagination, how we can access it and how we can use it, and really why we must at a time like this. Because our mind, although it can be problematic for us from time to time, also has the capacity to help us capture a vision that can light the way forward with our intuition, with our heart knowledge, and with insight. So I like to begin with the question, what does it take for us to meet this moment before us right now, to be able to live our divine life fully and to contribute what is ours to contribute to bring forth a more just and merciful world. So today I'm going to offer 3 steps and a little practice that we can engage in, one that I hope that you'll find useful for opening to possibility and accessing that supportive influence of grace as we embrace the highest good. I want to return to the quote from the Narayana Upanishad that is my inspiration for this series. The form of that one is not to be seen. The form of that one is not to be seen. No one sees it with the eyes. Only one who has opened the heart, the thoughts, and the mind sees it. Only one who has opened the heart, the thoughts, and the mind may see it. So last week's message focused on the importance of letting the mind sink into the heart, learning how to let our restless thoughts become quiet, settle, anchoring our awareness in our essence of being so that we can become receptive to inner guidance. Being still is really the foundation for intentional living. It's how we open to inspiration. It's how we receive higher guidance. It's how we begin to capture possibility and how we connect to the presence of supportive grace. It's always important to get still and be receptive to higher good, but I think it's crucially important right now as we're responding to this global pandemic and the changes that are upon us to now take steps forward. For us here in the United States, it's how do we enter back into the workplace, into being more engaged in relationships and activities. And for us on the spiritual path, how do we do that in a conscious way, and perhaps even in a more conscious way than we did before? Like taking whatever we learned during this past year about how we operate in the world and how we want to operate in the world, and beginning to put that into practice. Last week I also introduced the principle of Rita, Sanskrit word that refers to the cosmic divine order of things, this inherent harmony that is the emanation of truth into action. So it is the highest harmony that is being expressed in our world. That divine harmony pervades our life. It's everywhere, and it enlivens and it runs and sees to order in our universe. It's why the planets don't run into each other. So we can learn to cooperate with that power, with that presence, with that harmonious tendency to bring truth forward. And that's actually what we need to do. We need to find out how to harmonize with that that's already present and already in motion. So I have a favorite story that I often think about when I think about this principle and the steps that we need to take to cooperate with it. This is a story, one of those, once upon a time, in a village. The village was experiencing a severe drought, and it was devastating their life. They tried everything, to conserve the water that they had and to plant drought-resistant crops, but conditions were becoming dire, and they didn't know what to do. So someone told them about a healer from a faraway land who had the power of controlling the elements. A rainmaker. And so, they had their doubts, but they were desperate. So they said, okay, bring him in. So they sent for him. And when he arrived, they asked him what he needed to do his work. And he said what he needed was a simple hut, a simple place on the edge of the village, on the far edge of the village, and he needed to be completely undisturbed. He didn't want to see anyone, he didn't want to talk to anyone. That's what he wanted. So they found a spot for him, and as he requested, they completely left him alone. There were some who would kind of wander around and look and see if they could see how he was doing, but they didn't see him, and they didn't see any sign of him or any activity. But on the third day, as these stories go, on the third day, it began to rain. So first a drizzle, and then a downpour. And the villagers were overcome with joy, and so they rushed to his hut at the edge of the village, and they began to shout and to sing and to dance and to call him forth. And when he came out of his hut, they said to him, we're so grateful. What did you do? What did you do? And he was quiet as he looked at all of them, and he said, nothing. I was just getting ready. And so that's it. That's the foundation. That's the first thing that we need to do is get settled, get ready. Because once we get settled, then we can see more clearly, can't we? The way things are. And not only the way things are, but the way they could be in their highest version. We can begin to open our insight and our intuition, and with our imagination, we can begin to see what is possible. Where things are broken, we can see them repaired. Where challenging conditions are blocking, we can see wholeness being restored. But we have to get quiet. We have to get out of our conditioned thinking, out of that hamster cage, the hamster in the cage that goes around and around and around with what the problems are. So when we get quiet, we can begin to let our imagination capture the vision of wholeness that is already there. Then we can cooperate with the rising of truth that is connected to that vision for our lives and for our world. I want to share a quote that was written by Toinette Lippi that is part of the introduction to Jiafu Feng's translation of the Tao Te Ching. She wrote, "Study the natural order of things and work with it rather than against it. Study the natural order of things and work with it rather than against it. For to try to change what is only sets up resistance." Nature provides everything without requiring payment or thanks. It does so without discrimination. If we watch carefully, we will see that work proceeds more quickly and easily if we stop trying. If we stop putting in so much extra effort, if we stop looking for results. In the clarity of a still and open mind, truth will be revealed. Now, those 3 steps that I mentioned. So before step 1, as I've been saying, get settled, meditate, let your thoughts settle and awareness of your essence of being expand. Then, step 1, use your clarified awareness to examine how things are currently. So when we use our imagination to imagine the highest possibilities, we don't ignore what we see right now. If things are broken, we don't pretend that they're not. We see exactly what is in front of us. But with our higher awareness, with our imagination, we also know that behind what is seen as broken is actually wholeness. So first we start with seeing things how they are. Then we use our mind and our awareness to imagine the highest good, the highest possibility. And then the third step is to become receptive to divine grace. And we become receptive to it by knowing that it's the source of the vision to begin with. That we wouldn't even be having a higher vision if grace in that harmonious, supportive presence wasn't already there. It's part and parcel. They go together. So, choose a focus to begin, an area of your life where you're ready to cooperate with the infinite. Say, okay, God, I'm ready. Let's go. Then these are the steps. So, you can kind of go through it in your mind with me as you listen to me now, but it's best if you can take a little more time to be with this process. Write about it. Write what you see. Write what you hear, what you intuit, what you imagine. So take time to go through the process. But let me review. Step 1. How are things right now? See them clearly. Be with what it is without resisting it or trying to push it away. Name it. Describe it fully. Notice and describe how it feels, how it impacts you, how it impacts others. Name it. Describe it. What is it like now? So besides the literal description of how this is, you can also open yourself to an image, that signifies it for you, or a sound, or a feeling, something that encapsulates this whole thing, the whole thing. What is it like, right? Right now, what is it like? Ask for that descriptor, that there's something you can kind of hang on to about this. Then step 2, open to possibility. What is the highest vision you could see for this whole thing? What is its evolutionary potential? In your mind's eye, use your imagination to see the rising of the highest truth in action. See it coming forth. From brokenness, see wholeness. From discord, see harmony. What is the greatest good, the greatest possibility that you can imagine in this situation? Let your mind go there. What would it look like? What would it feel like? Try it on. How would it serve the greatest good? How would it serve others in our world? And is there a word or an image or a feeling that describes this for you? Then step 3, of course, is the answer to the question, how do I get there from here? Well, we collapse the journey. We embrace it now. We know that divine grace is already at work. As I said, it's already at work. It's already unfolding. So step 3 is about trusting that. Trusting that. Trusting the infinite. Trusting yourself who has this vision. Trusting your direct connection to the highest good. So have faith in the vision that you received, and know then that the steps for bringing it forth in fullness will be revealed to you and are right now unfolding before you. So you just need to watch and look and listen, and most of all, be. See it and be it. Be self-confident. Have confidence in the infinite. Confidence in yourself. Take each step that appears before you. So how does this work? Well, as I mentioned, the mind, using the tool of imagination, allows us to see through obstacles. And obstacles are part of the manifest world that's always in change, always moving and changing. So with our imagination, imagining the highest good, higher harmony, we can see through that. So I want to take a minute now, as I conclude, to go back to the topic of the brick wall that I brought up last week. So if you didn't hear that story, you have to go back to message number 1 and listen to that story. Talked about when I came into the temple after traveling for some time, this is some years ago, I saw that the back, the dais wall was brick. From floor to ceiling, it was brick, and it had been brick all the time. But somehow when I came back with fresh eyes, I said, oh Lord, that's a brick wall. And we need some light in here. We need some light in the temple. We need to let in more light. But it was a wall of bricks, and it turns out it was a load-bearing wall. And if you know anything about a building, you know that that's what's holding the building up, and in order to change it, you have to do major construction. We didn't have a budget for major construction. So we had to live with the question of, okay, we've been given a vision. How does it become possible? We had to stay with the question, how will it serve to have more light in this temple? So we stayed with the vision and the potential for the steps to be revealed. So enter David Rhodes, a friend, a spiritually awake, divine friend, and architect in our midst. So I asked him, David, how can we get more light through a brick wall? And it's such a good question because it's really the kind of the core question, isn't it, of every obstacle that we face? How can we get more light through a brick wall? And the answer was, and still is, you find a way to open to it. If you want more light, you find a way to open to it. So we couldn't tear down the wall. So I want you to know that behind these lighted windows, the brick wall is still there. But it's no longer an obstacle. Why? Because divine spirit, divine harmony, highest good, wanted us to be able to see the light. So through the inspiration and skill of David, above now is big solar tubes, solar tunnels that are up on the roof that allow natural light to come in front of the brick wall. And now these windows, of course, are receiving that light. So we have this wall that was built with the windows in front of the brick wall, but the light that is natural light coming from the sun and lighting up the temple. That's a great thing, isn't it? It's a great thing. So I want to close with the closing words from Amanda Gorman's inaugural poem for this country, from her poem, The Hill We Climb. And it's the closing stanza of her poem, and I want to say that her poem, The Hill We Climb, is one to read again and again. But let me just close with its final stanza for our topic today. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Om.